In the interest of time, I'm going to make a start. So a very warm welcome to everybody, and thank you again for making it. Today we're welcoming Dr. Paul Vare. If you haven't been to a learning lunch before, hold on to your seat. It tends to go very, very quickly. Paul is joining us today, and for those of you that don't know him, he's the chair of NAEE, the National Association for Environmental Education. He's also a member of Teach the Future's youth campaign on their adult advisory board, and he's academic advisor to the UN Economic Commission for Europe, so UNESCO Steering Committee on ESD. He's also co-authored numerous books and research articles and all things competencies to do with ESD and ESD strategy. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Paul, and give you time to get started. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you everybody for attending. As you said, it's a quick thing to rattle through, so I'm going to get straight on to stop other sharing. I guess I'm going to go in and share this screen. Let's hope it works. Share that one. Right, it seems to be full screen. Yeah, great.
Perfect.
Thumbs up there, thank you. So, as you said, the title then, Round a Sense of Purpose. The reason I wanted to talk about this today, I thought, well, it's I was actually at this conference, a European conference a few days ago, a few weeks ago, and I met some people from Ecuador and Colombia, and they were talking about actually how they were using Around a Sense of Purpose. And I thought, well, that's something that I thought was from the past. I've sort of moved on a bit, but actually it's worth bringing it back to people's attention again. If it is useful, and it seems to be being very well used there, I'd like to just take the opportunity to talk about it a little bit more. I'll tell you a bit about what it is. There's a whole framework of competencies, so I don't want to go into all of them. I won't have time. I'm going to pick on one, empathy, and good reason, I think. We consider the date, and I'll go back into that towards the end. I want to talk a bit about how the competencies are presented, and a bit about the title. Why has it got this title that doesn't say sustainability or education anywhere in it? And with those couple of things, to finish off then, some personal views on that sense of purpose title and where that's taken me. So just to say then, I'm not getting oh, there we are, it is working. There's a thing to tell you, it's funded by the European Union. I need to say a word from our sponsors, remember them. Then there's the we've won a few prizes with the Green Gown Award and the International Green Gown Award. And those are the countries. Little quiz there for you if you want to guess on the various flags that were countries that were involved in helping us work on this. We worked with about 500 different groups, so individuals rather, head teachers, student teachers, a lot of different educators, informal educators, and we came up with these competencies. If you look across the top of this screen, there are three words, three phrases: thinking holistically, envisioning change, and achieving transformation. They're from the original competencies that UNESCO did, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. It's a piece of work I was involved with back in 2012. We came up with 39 competencies for teachers, and we felt this was an impossible number. We need to narrow it down. We managed to get it down to these 12. I'm not going to go into them all, but just to say there are 12. Empathy there, right in the middle, more or less where the heart should be. And it's what was interesting about this was, as we were working, we were getting lots of feedback from different people who were working with them. As we were starting to rename them, we couldn't reduce that anymore. We couldn't take one away. One of my sort of more sort of memorable quotes from this was from a Dutch teacher student. He said, when you work with one of the competencies, you can't help thinking about the other 11. And that led me to think about, well, yeah, these boxes, they're not helpful. That's not how competence really is. It's in our mind, it's in our actions. And so sort of I thought, well, let's present it differently. And that's when I decided they need to be on a palette. And so if you like, the the enduring image of RSP, and the one that people I've seen used when it's been written about, has been this palette. The idea of the palette, of course, is there are the the 12 competencies there. You could add others. You can also mix them. You use more than one at a time. As an educator, you are the artist. You're not the person who's having to just follow the rules. There's an agency in this, and so it's quite important for us as educators to feel that we are in control of these things. We do pick and choose, and that's something I want to come back to as well later on. This sense of the teacher as the creator of opportunities, and not somebody who's simply a technician. At the core of the whole framework, if I was to boil the RSP, Random Sense of Purpose, down to sort of 3 points, it's about a critical awareness of connections, our personal, professional, environmental, how to nurture connection, a positive vision for your future, thinking about what you can do and your agency in that, and the importance of just doing something, ideally with other people, but it may not be what you want to do. But even if you try something, and even if it seems futile, it's kind of good for mind and body to have a go and just to resist, if you like, if not be able to change things. It's better that you tried. There's always a website, of course. We have this one, Around a Sense of Purpose, and you can just see the palette down there. If you click on one of the colors, or you can get the table up as well, but you can click on any competence and you'll see the competence explained. You will also find beneath that a list of all the different sustainable development goals, and you can click on a goal and you will get an activity that you could do which helps you practice that competence in relation to that activity, whether it's gender or life under the sea or life on land, whatever it is, the goal. So there's about over 200 different activities there. If you clicked on empathy, the first thing you would see is that descriptor again that was in the first table. So the educator helps learners respond to their feelings and emotions. And I'm going to have to watch out. I can't read everything. I've got this. I have to that's better. Developing emotional connections to the natural world. Beneath that are the learning outcomes. So the educator helps learners too, and there's always three learning outcomes for each competence. So the first one there, about listening to your own emotions as well as those of others. Sort of getting to know yourself is a big deal. Connections within and beyond human species. It's important here. It's one of the additions that came into the competence framework was we've got to think beyond the human world and make connections that way. And lastly, coping mechanisms and sources of resilience were important as well. Beneath the learning outcomes, you have these other underpinning components which help to explain it even further. They're not kind of the core things necessarily, but we listed those to help you sort of understand what we meant by that competence. And the first one here is techniques to help learners develop their empathy. Well, as I've said, there are all these different activities you can choose. There are things like just looking at photographs. What do you think of these people are thinking? What are they feeling? Have a conversation with your partner about it, that sort of thing. And I'm getting to know this one very well because we've used it before, and there's so many interpretations, and it took me a while to spot the person on the right-hand side reading a book. But there's a lot of activity there, and there's a whole series of pictures that we can show just to get people to think. Listen actively, authentically. Of course, that's critical that we do that exercise. Again, you can do it in pairs or threes, talking to somebody else and then talking back to them as them. Did I get it right? Have I really got you? Have I really explained what you were thinking and feeling in your story? So that's a good practice. And another one I'd pick out is just you using your imagination. The curriculum is packed. The curriculum is very content focused. It's full of knowledge based. Great, but we need permission almost to be reminded to use our imagination outside of creative subjects, and that's critical. And that's part of what empathy and how empathy works, is that you are imagining yourself in another's shoes. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about was the name Around a Sense of Purpose and the purpose of education. And we often talk about sustainable development in these nested system model rather than interlocking or three separate pillars, that economy, society, and environment. And the environment's out there. We tend to focus on our eco is home, and that's our, our health and well-being. But it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You need society, and then society itself is supported by the environment. And I was struck when I came across writer Sasha Kagan, who's a German, wrote about art and sustainability, and they sort of use the same nested model. And I thought, well, yeah, I recognize that. That's rather like the sustainable development model. But they put biodiversity out there, then cultural diversity, and then human well-being. I thought I do like that model, but it's more of a manifesto for the arts in the curriculum. I felt it didn't cover everything I was concerned with. So I sort of thought I'd have a go at my own. And for me, it's simply life, which is teaming diversity. It's regenerative. It's the ultimate quality assurance. If education isn't enhancing and developing life on Earth, then what is it doing? Where are we going? Life, of course, will scroll by without any of us if we let it. And we've got to find meaning in the world, and so meaning has to be in the middle there. And I think that is where your curriculum comes in. Our curiosity is stimulated. So we quest for, whether through science or through art, different or religion, whatever. There are different routes to help ourselves find meaning in the world that we find ourselves in, and to respond to it. And it's critical that the curriculum covers all these different subjects that we're familiar with, because they're different ways of understanding the time and the space of the world that we're in. And one of my questions here is just, how do you find the space? If a learner finds an anchor point, an interest in the curriculum, how do we let them nurture and develop that whilst we have to move on and do the other things we need to do? And then in the middle there, yeah, empathy maybe, but this care, connection, making the connection back and forwards through meaning and through life. And perhaps the most fundamental thing here, when you strip it all away, I guess I left it with love as a means by which we communicate, a means by which we relate, but also almost the thing you want to develop. It's almost like a purpose in itself, because it is the thing that's left at the end of everything. And so I felt that curriculum, if you like, would help me as to think about what's the role of education, where does it fit in the world, and how do we do it, and what's it all for, where do we end up even if everything goes wrong, love is still there in the center. And so that's a critical one for me. I'm aware about a couple of minutes, if that. So I just want 3 images I've said here. I'm aware it's the 7th of October. This is about 2 years ago, 2 years and about a month ago. These are children in Gaza queuing up for their first day at school. And of course, we need to be aware that this has taught me a lot about the world in the last couple of years. And obviously, these aren't bloodthirsty terrorists who want to wreak revenge any more than these children in Israel are genocidal monsters who want to annihilate everybody on the other picture. But that happens to us. And the people who are in this picture are the teachers, of course. They have a role to play in this. And the connection between this and wider sustainability, I guess, is another piece of news I've been looking at recently, which is Rockstrom Institute's, it's a Resilient Institute's latest planetary boundaries. I always thought that if these boundaries were clearly identified, surely somebody would respond quickly and do something about it. But if you haven't done it about a genocide, when are you going to do it about climate change, something that's slow and inexorable? So again, it's like, how do you work with this feeling? And it comes back to the sense that it's not just the science. We need connection, we need care, we need to look at the world as a whole, because it is beautiful, and make that the sense of purpose. And it's the hardest thing to do in education. We're being told what education is. We're always being given instructions. And as teachers, the curriculum is packed. But as a teacher, as an educator, if you know your purpose and you find that within your work, and you work despite some of the other things going on, you are changing the system. You're part of the system. So if you can have an impact there, you are changing the system. So that's my little world of way of looking at it at the moment. And I'll leave that with you. Something I want to write up, by the way, which leaves me with a question, really, within our spheres of influence. How do we build care and connection between ourselves, our learners, the way we conduct ourselves for a secure and regenerative future? Thank you very much. Hope that was 15 minutes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. That was the most to time learning lunch I think we've had so far. So congratulations, very well done, and thank you for that question, a really provocative question around what can we do within our spheres of influence. So really thinking about ourselves and the worlds that we are in. How do we build care and connection for a secure, regenerative future? So we're going to have some time now in breakout rooms to discuss this question, and then we're going to come back together just for the final few minutes, just to share some of the thoughts that have come up. So enjoy your times in the breakout rooms, and thank you again, Paul. That was really, really beautifully presented.
Welcome back, everybody. I think I'll be all back here. Great. And right, well, what we're going to do now is, if anybody would like to share what they did, what they've discussed, and what we have decided to do is because there's quite a few groups, and we've only got about 5 minutes. So if you would like to just type in the chat sort of some key points from what you were discussing, that will be downloaded and saved, and so we have a record of the outcome of all of the groups. But meanwhile, it would be great to hear from some of you. If anybody's got an idea they'd like to share, what did you discuss? What kind of thoughts did you have about how you are sharing, finding ways of building care and connection? Any hands or waves or something? Go on, Simon. I knew you would. Come on. Good
I
for you.
mean, I'll try and keep it incredibly brief, but I guess it goes to the heart of my sort of approach or emerging approach to sustainability education. But I think we need to start thinking about how we can turn our attention outward. Your final prompt made me think about how a lot of the issues we face are generated by the turn inward. And I don't see inward turning necessarily as a bad thing, but I think healthy inward turning is when we turn that attention outward to something larger than ourselves. And nature, in so far as it is the largest other, by turning our attention to that, we decenter ourselves and we open up ourselves to relationships of reciprocity and care, which then, in our lived experience, if we can then inhabit that way of being, then we can start doing the difficult work of asking the questions of what type of leadership do we need? What type of systems do we need to empower those types of ways of being in the world? So I think it also links to this idea of sustainability as moving from a body of knowledge to be known to a kind of ontological framing, a way of being in the world and being with the other. So that's kind of.
Thanks for that, Simon. Yeah, and so and you're right. You don't not attend to yourself, of course. You need to look out for ourselves, especially in hard times. But recognizing that actually the greatest strength you will draw is from beyond yourself. Of course, you will. Yeah.
I think you should bring in. I think you should bring in Rob, because despite what you said there, he said something very powerful. Do you remember what you said now, Rob? Because I can if you haven't.
So it was partly the framing of the question that you gave us there, Paul. How do we build? And I just found that sometimes flipping it, that it's not what we need to do to build. It's sometimes in education what we need to stop doing. And I talked in particular, and I think the point Anne's trying to push me to is I talked about the violence of the education system, that is actually quite a violent system. And that actually we need to take a look at that and think about what do we need to stop doing, because then that links to the point I've put in the chat that a lot of natural compassion, care, love, creativity, curiosity is there in young people and in teachers, but that this violence tends to dilute that, or indeed to force it out of us. So that was, I think that was the point Anne wanted me to make. But Anne,
I did.
Good.
I did.
Well, thanks for bringing that out. Yeah, I think it's the important thing in action competence. That phrase, that term that we use, it's a continental phrase or Scandinavian phrase, but it's critical. The action is the decision, not the doing. So you can decide not to do something. That is an action. And I think that's really important as well. So I did say about just do something, but actually you're right. We could just not do something.
In our team, Julia also had a really interesting insight on her PhD on creativity in primary schools, And it was really the thing about what teachers decide to do or not to do in primary. Do you want to say that, Julia?
Yes. So I was just reflecting on, so just to give a brief summary, I was looking in my PhD research at how primary school pupils would experience sustainability education through the lens of creative and design-led approaches. And what I was also kind of observing in the context of primary schools, the teachers would also be very confident in saying no to certain things, to certain award schemes or lesson plans, or they would take this on as inspiration, but also be very careful with what they would bring into the schools and not just dilute everything with everything and not knowing anymore what they would follow, but just taking it very simple. We were also talking about it doesn't need much to just start a conversation about sustainability or any topic pupils care about, but just start from somewhere and then go with pupils together somewhere new, if you want to say so.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and that again, that's for trying to get across in the palette is that it's all there, but you don't have to use it all.
Yeah.
You use the bits that are right for you today, in your context. That's important.
But I wondered if there was a sort of, it sounded like a strength of primary teachers who, will say, well, I'm just going to have a conversation about this now, or look at those diagrams or pictures or photos or whatever. Whereas, is it different in secondary schools is what made me think about it. And our experience with young change makers is almost the complete reverse. That it is hard to get them to think differently and to stop thinking along one set of lines, and do it differently.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done.
How are we doing? It's
okay.
time, isn't it?
No, we can carry on, Paul, if people want to stay on.
George, did you have a comment there that you'd added that you wanted to in the chat?
I can mention I wasn't in the breakout room. It was me, Holly, and Paul having a chat about quite a few different things. But one that sort of stuck out to me was we sort of discussed as obviously we lost Dame Jane Goodall last week, and her sort of guiding light was what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And we sort of discussed the idea that within that and behind that is where do the actions come from that you want to make, and what sort of place do they come from, and the idea of having care, connection, love, empathy all at the center of all you do or all people do will lead to sort of positive differences that will help make the world a better place for everyone within it, in a way.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, lovely place to end. And it also is a beautiful introduction to the next learning lunch that we've got with Heather, who you can see here. Heather Rowlands from Peacemakers, who's coming to talk to us a little bit about what she does and what Peacemakers do, and a toolkit that goes along with that. So thank you very much, everyone. As usual, far too short. Our conversation had only just started, but lovely to see you. Paul, thank you so much for giving up your time, and heartily recommending, if you haven't been to the RSOP website, to go and have a look. There are amazing a number of resources and links and ideas around all of these competencies, educator competencies. So huge thank you. I've got a lovely warm fuzzy glow now to take with me into the afternoon, with all this talk of love and care and compassion. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next time.